The Legend of Jigong, Chapter 78.
We find ourselves in the east side room of a local inn. The atmosphere is tense, they are exhausted, and we have these two constables, or runners as they are called in this context.
Right, Cha Yuanlu and Du Zheniying.
Yeah, Chai and Du. Now, before we look at what they're doing, we really need to understand who these guys actually are. Because when we say constables, you might picture like a respected modern detective with a gold badge.
Yeah, but the reality of a runner in this system is just significantly more complicated.
It's not prestigious at all, is it?
Not even a little, it's deeply precarious. Runners were basically the foot soldiers of the local magistrate's office, which is called the yamen.
The grunts, basically.
Totally. They did the gritty, exhausting physical labor of the justice system, serving subpoenas, executing arrests, collecting taxes.
Tracking down fugitives in the mud.
Exactly. But socially, they occupied this fascinating paradox. They wielded immense coercive power over commoners because they represented the state, right?
Right.
But legally and socially, they were often considered a degraded class themselves.
Wait, really? Like lower class?
Oh, absolutely. They were not elite scholars who passed the imperial exams. They were commoners drafted or just hired into a brutal, thankless job.
So their authority is entirely derivative.
Yes, 100%.
I mean, they don't have power because of who they are.
Right.
They have power strictly because of the specific errand they are running for the magistrate.
Precisely. They are just vessels for the state's power. And if that vessel cracks, the power leaks out.
And they're left as just low-status laborers far from home.
Yep. And as we join Chai and Du in this inn room, they are currently tasked with a massive responsibility. They are traveling with a famous, eccentric, supposedly half-crazy Buddhist monk, Jigong.
And right now they're currently waiting for this monk because Jigong has gone out to use the outhouse. But he has been gone an uncomfortably long time. So the tension is brewing in this room. And while they're waiting, the text gives us this crucial flashback to a moment just before Jigong left.
Oh, the teapot incident.
Yes. Chai starts complaining to Du. He calls the monk half crazy because, right before walking out the door, Jigong somehow managed to break a teapot, just spilling water everywhere.
And it spills all over the Kang and all over their personal belongings.
Which is a huge deal. Can you explain what a Kang is for anyone listening who might not know?
Sure. So for listeners who might not be familiar with the architecture, a Kang is a traditional heatable brick bed. It's really common in northern China.
It's not just a mattress on the floor.
No. It's a massive raised platform. It serves as a bed, a dining area, and just a general living space within the room.
So when Jigong breaks this teapot, he hasn't just wet a blanket.
Right. He has completely flooded the central living surface of their temporary home.
It feels like this piece of light slapstick comedy to open the scene. Like a clumsy monk trips, breaks a pot, makes a mess.
But the author is using this mundane, annoying accident to immediately turn the screws on these two constables.
Yes, because suddenly, Du realizes the terrifying implication of this puddle. He tells Chai they need to immediately open their travel bundle and check something really specific.
He's terrified that the sea-catching public document might have gotten wet.
The sea-catching public document. I mean, the linguistic construction of that phrase alone tells you everything about the scale of their mission.
It really does. It translates roughly to a wide net arrest warrant.
Like draining the sea to find a needle.
Exactly. That is the scope of authority this piece of paper grants. It's a high-level government directive authorizing these two specific runners to cross jurisdictional lines.
They can basically demand local cooperation anywhere.
Yes, and hunt down a major named criminal across the empire. And in this narrative, the target is a fugitive named Hua Yunlong.
So without this document, they are just two guys with swords trespassing in another magistrate's territory.
Yep. They have zero legal standing.
This single piece of paper is their badge. It's their jurisdiction, their budget, and their armor. It's the only thing separating them from being considered heavily armed vagrants.
And here is where the text gets incredibly specific and grounding.
Yeah.
They open the bundle on the wet Kang, and their absolute worst nightmare is realized. The warrant is wet.
Oh, man.
A corner of the document has completely soaked through.
And the author provides a detail here that elevates the writing from just a simple fable into this gritty, tactile reality, right?
Oh, absolutely. The text explicitly notes that this precious document was wrapped tightly in oil paper to protect it from the elements.
Oil paper.
Yeah, it's a traditional, heavily treated material designed to be highly water resistant. It was basically the ancient equivalent of laminating a document or putting it in a waterproof dry bag.
But the waterproofing failed.
It totally failed,
Yeah.
but it failed because of time and friction.
Right.
The text tells us that because they had been traveling on the road for so many days, the constant rubbing of the oil paper inside their bundles had worn the material paper thin at the corners.
Wow.
So the protective layer was physically degraded by the journey itself.
So when the tea spilled, it found that single-worn vulnerability at the edge seeped in and compromised the imperial document.
Exactly.
Just think about the psychological weight of that for a second. You can prepare perfectly. You can wrap your most vital possession in the best waterproof material available. But you cannot fight the friction of a long journey.
Right. The elements, the bumping of the cart, the walking.
The journey itself grinds away your defenses.
It grounds the narrative in the physical toll of law enforcement in a pre-industrial age. It reminds you that justice isn't just this abstract concept debated in courtrooms.
It requires physical human beings dragging physical objects across thousands of miles of hostile terrain.
And everyone listening to this can relate to the modern equivalent of this exact panic. Oh, totally. Picture yourself traveling internationally. You are exhausted, you're stressed, you're at a crowded cafe, and you're a border crossing, just trying to keep your itinerary together.
And your chaotic, clumsy travel companion knocks over a massive venti iced coffee right onto your open backpack.
Your heart just stops.
Your passport is in there, your
Yeah.
visa documents are in there.
You rip open the bag and you literally see the coffee seeping into the binding of your passport, just smearing the ink on the entry stamps.
And the bureaucracy at the border checkpoint does not care if your friend was clumsy.
Not at all.
The machine of the state only recognizes the integrity of the document. If the document is unreadable, you do not exist in the system.
Or worse, you exist as a threat.
Exactly.
Yeah.
The anxiety Chai and Du are feeling is identical to that modern border crossing panic, multiplied by the fact that their failure might result in a severe beating or execution by their superiors, which is just wild. So they do the only thing they can do. They panic. They take this incredibly important, terrifyingly fragile, slightly soggy government document, and they lay it out flat on the cane to dry.
Just praying to the bureaucracy gods.
Right, they're praying the ink of the imperial seal hasn't bled into illegibility.
And they're entirely focused on this physical crisis, completely consumed by the vulnerability of the paper. But this entire sequence...
The broken teapot, the water, all of it.
Yeah, it's all a narrative sleight of hand by the author. It is a massive distraction.
Because while they are hyper-focused on this piece of paper, time is ticking by. And the actual human being they're supposed to be watching Jigong is still missing.
He has been at the outhouse for an impossible amount of time.
So the pacing shifts gears here. The men realize their mistake. Chai tells Du that they cannot just sit there watching paper dry. They need to go find the monk before he causes an even bigger disaster.
So in a moment of compounding poor judgment driven by stress, they leave their room.
Which is a terrible idea.
A terrible idea. They leave the damp, vital warrant drying on the bed, totally unguarded, and they march out into the courtyard toward the outhouse.
And the scene they encounter at the outhouse is completely baffling. It introduces this element of the surreal right into this gritty, bureaucratic procedural.
They arrive to find an inn worker standing outside the wooden outhouse door.
Yeah, and the worker is holding a lantern, and he is just staring at the structure in a state of absolute frozen confusion.
Chai demands to know what is happening, and the worker's response is a perfect crystallization of a locked room mystery.
Except the locked room is the latrine.
Exactly. The worker explains, I personally watched the monk walk into the outhouse. I stood here waiting, but now he is gone.
And the worker actually checked. He tells the constables he got tired of waiting, assumed the monk fell in or got sick or something, so he poked his head in and held up the lantern.
And it was empty.
Completely empty. A grown man, a highly visible monk, simply evaporated from a small wooden box while someone was standing right outside the only door.
Chai and Du are forced to process this impossible information. Du, relying on his cynical cop instincts rather than assuming like a supernatural miracle, immediately guesses the most pragmatic truth.
Which is?
The monk has slipped away to abandon them. He has ditched his escorts.
Which is bad enough. Now they have a compromise warrant, and they have lost the primary subject of their escort mission.
Right, they are failing on all fronts.
They are standing in the dark courtyard, trying to figure out their next move, and they turn around to head back to their room.
And the moment they pivot away from the outhouse, the narrative accelerates from a tense mystery into a full-blown crisis.
It is such a jarring, violent shift in the action. They turn back toward the east side room where they left their belongings, and right before their eyes, a figure bursts out of their room.
Out of nowhere.
The text describes this figure as being dressed entirely in night-walking clothes. The figure twists their body, utilizes this incredible burst of martial agility, and leaps straight up onto the roof of the inn, disappearing into the darkness.
Right in front of the two veteran constables.
Okay, stop the tape. Because I am putting myself in the shoes of a reader here, and I am screaming at the constables.
No, it's so frustrating.
Chai and Du are professional runners. They hunt fugitives for a living. If they are trained law enforcement, why do they just stand there like statues?
They literally just watch.
A man in a literal cat burglar outfit just vaulted out of their private room. Why don't they shout? Why don't they draw their weapons? Why don't they pursue him? It feels like a massive plot hole regarding their competency.
That is a completely natural reaction from a modern reader accustomed to action sequences where the heroes instantly engage, right?
Right, like do something.
But the author actually anticipates this exact frustration and provides an explicit mechanical reasoning for their inaction. The text states, at this time, even if they wanted to chase, they couldn't catch him.
Is that just an excuse for slow reflexes?
Well, it's a realistic assessment of the physics and the skill gap in that specific second. Consider the elements here. Chai and Du are exhausted. They are standing flat-footed in a dark courtyard, wearing heavy travel boots and layered clothing. They are likely bogged down by the physical and mental fatigue of the road.
Sure, they're tired cops.
Meanwhile, the thief is wearing night-walking clothes, which in this literary tradition means lightweight, tightly bound garments, specifically designed to eliminate snagging, reduce noise, and maximize aerodynamic movement.
So the thief has the gear advantage.
Exactly. Furthermore, the thief is utilizing Jigong, or lightness skill, a martial arts trope implying highly specialized training in leaping and scaling walls.
So you're saying two tired cops on the ground simply do not have the explosive vertical jump required to follow a ninja onto a tile roof.
Exactly. The physical distance, the suddenness of the movement, the darkness. By the time their brains process the threat and send the signal to their legs, the thief is gone.
It really highlights their vulnerability.
Yeah, they are grounded bureaucrats. They are not superheroes. But beyond the physics of the scene, there is a much deeper literary mechanism at play here to explain the chaotic pacing.
Tell me about that.
The author explicitly breaks the fourth wall to speak directly to the reader, using a very specific traditional phrase to justify the timeline.
Yes, the text says, one pen cannot write two matters. I am fascinated by this phrase. Does it just mean the author is apologizing for not being able to describe two things at once?
It is much more profound than an apology. It is a structural artifact from the oral storytelling tradition out of which this literature evolved.
Like someone speaking in a marketplace.
Exactly. In a marketplace, a storyteller speaking to a crowd can only vocalize one timeline linearly. To explain parallel events, they develop these metatextual signposts.
Oh, that makes so much sense.
The author is using one pen cannot write two matters to signal to the audience a brutal reality about this timeline. What you just read, the prolonged, baffling stakeout at the outhouse, and what you are seeing right now, the highly skilled thief raiding the room, did not happen sequentially.
They happen simultaneously.
Precisely. It creates a feeling of overwhelming, converging chaos.
So, while the reader's attention and the constable's attention was entirely consumed by the locked room mystery of the latrine, the real attack was occurring in the shadows behind them.
The constables were being attacked on two completely different fronts, one psychological and confusing, the other physical and direct at the exact same time.
Wow.
The author is proving that Chai and Du are completely unequipped to handle this level of coordinated or at least coincidental disaster.
It is like a split-screen technique in modern cinema. On the left side of the screen, you watch the comedic confusion as they stare at an empty wooden box.
Right.
And on the right side of the screen, you watch the sleek, silent thief slip through their window, scan the room, and grab the most valuable thing in there.
And the moment the constables turn around, the two screens smash into each other.
And the constables instantly realize the fatal error of their distraction. Chai yells to Du to quickly check the room.
They know exactly what's missing.
They rush back inside, they look at the Kang, and their worst nightmare is staring back at them. The sea-catching document for Hua Yinlong, the damp, fragile, incredibly vital piece of paper they left out to dry, is gone.
It is a catastrophic failure of duty. Losing a vital government document is not an inconvenience. In this system, it is a dereliction of their primary function.
Because without that warrant, they cannot prove who they are.
Exactly. They cannot requisition local help, and they certainly cannot make a legal arrest. They are stranded in a foreign jurisdiction.
And they know that returning to their magistrate empty-handed will likely result in a brutal physical punishment, if not imprisonment.
Panic sets in. Absolute, raw panic. Chai starts shouting. He is raising the alarm in the middle of the courtyard.
The inn-worker who is standing at the outhouse comes running over, asking what the commotion is about. Chai, desperate, blurts out, "We lost something."
He expects help, right.
Yeah, he expects the inn staff to lock the doors and start hunting the thief.
But the inn-worker's reaction initiates a fascinating look at the social dynamics and the deep cynicism of this era.
Because the worker does not offer sympathy.
No, he does not offer to help at all. His reaction is immediate hostile suspicion.
The worker looks at these two frantic men and essentially accuses them of running a complex extortion scheme.
Yes.
He says, "Look, 3 of you checked in here. Now suddenly there are only 2 of you, your weird monk is gone, and you are immediately claiming you lost something valuable. You are trying to run a live scam on us."
A live scam. The worker is implying that Chai and Du intentionally hid their companion, intentionally hid their own belongings, and manufactured this entire crisis just to frame the inn for theft.
So they could legally demand massive financial compensation from the business.
Exactly. It's an insurance scam, basically.
It's such a staggeringly cynical leap to make within 5 seconds of hearing someone was robbed.
It really is.
But the worker doubles down. He says, "You can ask around. This inn has been open a long time in Longyu County. We don't put up with extortion. If everyone pulled this trick, we wouldn't have a business left to run."
This conflict rapidly escalates and attracts the attention of the man who owns the establishment, the innkeeper, Yang Gudong.
And Yang is not just a random hospitality manager, is he?
No, the text gives us his background, and it is the key to everything that happens next. Yang Gudong is a retired local police captain.
Wait, let me make sure I understand the hierarchy here. The text says he is the former head of the 3 classes of runners in Longyu County.
Exactly. The 3 classes of runners usually referred to the gate guards, the arrest runners, and the jailers.
Oh, wow.
To be the head of all 3 classes means Yang Gudong was the undisputed apex predator of local law enforcement before he retired.
He was the chief.
He was the chief. He is highly respected, deeply embedded in the local power structure, and incredibly wealthy, which is why he now owns a major inn.
So he knows all the tricks.
He spent his entire adult life dealing with criminals, con artists, smugglers, and liars.
So when Chai and Du, 2 low-level out-of-town runners who just lost their badges, try to report a theft to the innkeeper, they are essentially trying to file a police report with a retired police chief who used to do their job, but at a vastly more successful and ruthless level.
That power dynamic is everything here. Yang Gudong brings his law enforcement background directly into his business management.
Right.
He listens to his workers' report. 3 men arrived, 1 bizarre monk disappeared without a trace, and now the remaining 2 are screaming about a stolen item in the middle of the night.
And Yang applies his ex-cop logic to the situation.
And he deduces exactly what his worker deduced. This is a shakedown.
Because from his perspective, it looks exactly like a shakedown.
Yeah.
He's probably arrested dozens of scammers running this exact playbook.
Yes. Yang Gudong decides to call their bluff immediately. He is not going to be extorted in his own inn.
So what does he do?
He orders a massive, highly disruptive search of the entire property. He tells his workers to go wake up every single guest in the inn.
That is bold.
He wants everyone to check their luggage, check their rooms, and verify if anything else is missing. He points at Chai and Du and declares, "If anyone else in this inn is missing so much as a copper coin, we are holding these 2 men entirely responsible."
He weaponizes the situation against them. He turns the victims of the robbery into the prime suspects of a conspiracy.
It is a masterful display of local authority crushing out-of-towners.
The scene devolves into absolute chaos. The workers are going door to door. They are lighting lanterns, banging on wooden frames, shouting into rooms, waking up traveling merchants and scholars in the dead of night.
Just absolute pandemonium.
Check your bags, check your belongings, and up and down the halls, angry guests are shouting back, "No, we are fine. Nothing is missing here. Go away."
The tension is mounting with every cleared room.
The workers systematically sweep the inn until they arrive at the main room, the upper room.
And in traditional inn architecture, the upper room is the most expensive, most secure, and most prestigious accommodation, usually reserved for wealthy merchants or officials.
So the worker arrives at this premium room and calls out to the guest inside. "Master, did you lose anything?"
There is no answer.
The worker knocks again, calling out louder. Still, dead silence. The noise of the entire inn waking up is echoing around them, but this one room is completely unnervingly quiet.
So the worker reaches out and pushes the door.
It isn't locked.
Yeah.
It's just resting on the latch, and it swings slightly ajar.
This specific moment marks the transition of the narrative from a comedy of bureaucratic errors into a genuine, visceral horror story.
The atmosphere instantly shifts. The worker steps tentatively into the outer anteroom. He can see a faint light spilling out from the inner bedchamber.
Right.
He walks toward the light, reaches his hand out, and lifts the fabric curtain separating the rooms to peer inside.
And the reaction is instantaneous and explosive.
The moment the worker looks past the curtain, he screams. Not a yell of surprise, but a guttural scream of absolute terror.
He drops the curtain and turns and runs out of the room like he is being chased by a demon.
The text explicitly notes that the color completely drains from his face. He is hyperventilating.
The trauma of what he just witnessed renders him almost incapable of speech. He collapses into the crowd, stammering, "My mother, I'm scared to death."
Which, as you can imagine, acts like a magnet for every single person in the courtyard.
Everyone wants to see.
The innkeeper, Yang Gudong, the other workers, the awoken guests, and Chai and Du all rush toward the main room to see what could possibly have broken this man's mind.
And what they find inside.
I mean, we need to spend some time on this because it is a spectacularly gruesome, highly specific tableau.
It is intensely graphic, especially contrasting with the almost slapstick tone of the broken teapot earlier.
They crowd into the inner room. The light is shining on the floor. And lying right there on the wooden floorboards is a freshly decapitated head.
Specifically, the smooth, bald head of a monk.
And if that wasn't shocking enough, the staging of the rest of the body is what truly elevates the horror.
Yes, the body.
They look up from the head and they see the headless corpse. But it isn't sprawled on the ground in a pool of blood. The text says the headless corpse is sitting in a chair, half leaning, half propped up, almost casually resting.
It is a profoundly unsettling discovery that demands forensic analysis.
Put your detective hat on for a second, because the staging of this body makes no sense for standard robbery gone wrong.
Not at all.
A decapitation is an incredibly violent, messy, physically demanding act. It implies a massive struggle, or at least a forceful execution. If a struggle happens, bodies fall, tables are overturned.
Exactly. Chaos.
But a headless corpse, just casually half-leaning in a chair. How does the physics of that even work? What does that staging tell us about the killer, or the exact circumstances of this murder?
It raises deeply chilling questions about the timeline and the psychology of the perpetrator. Let's break down the possibilities.
Okay, let's hear it.
In a typical violent struggle, momentum carries the combatants to the floor. The fact that the victim is seated suggests one of two terrifying scenarios. Scenario 1. The victim was executed while sitting down, perhaps entirely unaware, immobilized, or asleep in the chair.
Okay.
For the body to remain seated after a decapitation, the strike would have to be so impossibly swift, clean, and powerful that the body simply slumped backward into the chair without the kinetic energy tipping it over.
Which implies a level of martial arts proficiency that is almost supernatural. We are talking master assassin levels of blade precision.
Exactly. But there's a second scenario, which from a psychological standpoint is even more disturbing.
What's that?
The second possibility is that the killer murdered the monk perhaps on the floor, perhaps on the bed, and then deliberately, painstakingly picked up a heavy, profusely bleeding, decapitated corpse, dragged it across the room, and intentionally posed it in the chair, leaving the head separately on the floor.
Why on earth would someone take the time to pose a bleeding corpse in the middle of a busy inn?
Theatricality. Psychological warfare.
That is so twisted.
It is. It turns a murder scene into a message. If a killer poses a body, they are displaying supreme confidence. They are not rushing. They are not panicked about being caught by the patrols outside.
Wow. Okay.
Given that just moments prior, we witnessed a highly skilled thief in night-walking clothes effortlessly vaulting over rooftops, we are clearly dealing with a perpetrator or a group of perpetrators who operate with an arrogant, theatrical flair.
They want the authorities to find this specific horrifying image.
A show-off assassin. That makes the entire situation so much more dangerous.
But right now in the narrative, the crowd standing in that room isn't analyzing the blood spatter or the forensic psychology of the killer.
No, they are just a group of normal people staring at a dead, headless monk.
And this is where the innkeeper, Yang Guodong, his retired cop brain, kicks into overdrive. And the conclusion he reaches seals the doom of our two constables.
Yang Guodong surveys the room, looks at the corpse, looks back at Chai and Du, and connects the dots using the limited, highly circumstantial evidence available to him.
He lays out his theory to the crowd, and honestly, if you don't know the truth, it sounds like an airtight case.
Oh, absolutely.
He points at Chai and Du and says, "Look at the facts. You two arrived at my inn traveling with a poor, crazy monk. Now suddenly, a different, wealthy monk guest is dead in my best room, and your poor monk is entirely missing."
His conclusion is inevitable based on those data points.
He declares that Jigong is the killer. He says the poor monk murdered the wealthy guest, stole his valuables, and fled into the night.
And Chai and Du are his accomplices.
Right. Who intentionally stayed behind to run interference by pretending to be victims of a robbery themselves, creating a distraction while the killer escaped.
It is incredible how perfectly Yang Guodong's logic fits the observable facts while being 100% factually incorrect.
It's the perfect trap.
It really highlights the danger of circumstantial evidence and the inherent bias of his law enforcement background, but we also have to examine the mechanism driving Yang's immediate accusation.
What do you mean?
He isn't just trying to solve a crime out of the goodness of his heart. He is driven by sheer self-preservation based on imperial law.
Why is he in danger? He didn't kill anyone.
Because of the principle of strict liability in the local administrative system, in this era, the government maintained order through a system of collective responsibility.
Oh, I see.
An innkeeper wasn't just a businessman providing beds, he was essentially a deputized surveillance node for the magistrate. He was required to register guests, monitor behavior, and prevent crime.
So if a crime happens on his watch?
If a capital offense, a murder occurs on his premises, and the culprits escape, the magistrate will not simply shrug it off. Yang Guodong, as the property owner, could be held legally liable for allowing a murder to occur and failing to catch the killer.
So the bureaucratic consequences for an unsolved murder in his inn could destroy him.
Completely destroy him. He could face massive financial fines, brutal physical beatings in the court, the closure of his business, or even imprisonment.
The state demands a culprit.
Exactly. So Yang Guodong goes into immediate survival mode. He needs a suspect to hand over to the magistrate. And Chai and Du are standing right there, fitting the profile perfectly.
He rallies his workers, he blocks the exits, he points at Chai and Du and shouts, "Do not let them escape. This is a matter of life and death, and I cannot bear this responsibility alone. We are all going to court."
He essentially executes a massive citizen's arrest.
He detains two active agents of the state in his courtyard, and Chai and Du are entirely paralyzed by this turn of events.
The text is almost tragic here. It says they truly didn't know the situation. How could they answer?
They are completely flabbergasted. 12 hours ago, they were the hunters. 10 minutes ago, they were just annoyed guys trying to dry out their paperwork on a bed.
And now they are violently detained as the primary accomplices to a gruesome theatrical decapitation. The crowd of workers and guests keeps them trapped, shouting at them for half the night.
Meanwhile, Yang Guodong dispatches the local headman, the neighborhood watch leader, to run to the county yamen and report the murder to the active authorities.
Which brings us to the morning light, and to the crushing, inescapable irony of this entire sequence.
Right, because as the sun comes up over Longyu County, the official local constables and armed soldiers from the magistrate's office march into the inn courtyard.
And they are led by a head guard, a man named Lu Tu.
Lu Tu represents the active official arm of the local legal apparatus. He is essentially what Chai and Du are, but operating within his own jurisdiction.
Right, he's the local version of them.
Lu Tu walks into the inn, surveys the scene, looks at the headless corpse, and looks at Chai and Du, who are being held by the innkeeper. Does Lu Tu pull them aside for questioning? Does he ask for their side of the story?
No, not at all.
No. He looks at them and simply barks, "You two, go fight your lawsuit."
And with a heavy clatter of metal, the soldiers throw iron chains around the necks and wrists of Chai and Du. They lock them up immediately, without a single question asked.
Chai Yuanlu, who remember is a veteran constable, a man whose entire career is built on putting iron chains on other people, is outraged.
He can't believe it.
He protests. He yells at the local guards, "Brothers, why are you locking us up? We are on the same side."
And Lu Tu's response is the ultimate bureaucratic brush-off. He is completely dismissive of their fraternity. He says, "No need to explain yourselves here to us. Save your words for the magistrate's hall."
Tell it to the judge.
Basically, yeah.
Let's really analyze the psychological whiplash these two men have experienced over the last 12 hours. The night before, they were the elite agents of the imperial law. They possessed a sea-catching document.
They had ultimate authority.
They had the authority to demand horses, demand beds, demand respect from local officials. They were the apex predators of the justice system.
And the irony is just suffocating. By sunrise, because of a spilled cup of tea degrading a piece of paper, they have lost their badge of authority.
It's all gone.
They have been utterly outsmarted by a local thief. They have been detained by an innkeeper. And now they are physically chained together by their own colleagues in law enforcement.
The hunters have instantly become the hunted. It proves how incredibly fragile their authority was.
It wasn't intrinsic at all.
Their power wasn't intrinsic. It was entirely superficial. It was a costume made of oil paper. The moment the paperwork vanished, the very system they dedicate their lives to serving turned on them and began devouring them.
It is humiliating and terrifying. They're being marched down the public street, dragging heavy chains, presented to the town as the prime suspects in a grisly, horrific murder.
The text gives us this wonderful, bitter internal detail. As they were being dragged through the dirt toward the Longyu County Yamen, surrounded by guards, they're quietly, furiously cursing the monk Jigong in their hearts.
Well, of course they are.
Because they correctly trace every single piece of this nightmare back to him. If he hadn't broken the teapot, if he hadn't vanished in the outhouse, they would be sitting in their room right now, eating breakfast.
They are trapped in a labyrinth of false accusations, and they are entirely helpless to defend themselves without their official documents.
But just as they are being marched through the main crossroads of the town, utterly defeated, marching toward what could be their execution, the universe decides to play one more massive, absurd joke on them.
Oh, this part is brilliant.
Because casually strolling up the street from the opposite direction, walking directly toward this heavily armed convoy, is the very source of all their misery.
Jigong himself, the missing monk, just wandering back into the narrative.
He just wanders up. He doesn't look panicked. He doesn't seem surprised to see his two travel companions wrapped in iron chains.
No, he's totally chill.
In fact, he walks right up to the armed guards holding the chains, and he begins to speak. But he does it in the most jarring, unexpected, and culturally complex way possible.
This specific encounter is one of the most brilliant and linguistically rich moments in the entire text.
Tell me why.
Because Jigong, who is visually a Buddhist monk, shaved head, robes representing the divine and the ascetic, opens his mouth and starts speaking fluent, dense, highly technical underworld slang.
The text refers to it as black talk. It is Jianhu slang, the language of the rivers and lakes, the code of the criminal underworld, the triads, the bandits.
Right.
And I want to break down exactly what he says, syllable by syllable, because the author actually pauses the narrative to provide a translation for the reader, which proves how specialized and impenetrable this language was meant to be.
Please do. Analyzing this linguistic shift is crucial to understanding Jigong's character.
Okay, so this holy monk walks up to the heavily armed police convoy and says to the guards, "Good, you two lines of people. Finally, it's dizzy sky turning bright. You still want to pluck the flower's gourd. Once plucked, don't hastily flow and tear away, or else you'll let the parrot claws of the wing comb float you."
If you are an ordinary citizen or even a low-level guard, that sounds like the absolute babbling of a madman. It is designed to be a cipher.
Exactly. So the text acts as our decoder ring. Let's translate the slang. The text explains that dizzy sky means night. So he is saying, good, the night is over, it's finally morning.
Okay, makes sense.
Then he says, plucking the flower's gourd. This is the most shocking phrase. A gourd is a round, hard object growing on a vine. In the violent poetry of the underworld, the flower's gourd is a human head.
Wow.
So plucking, it means cutting off a head. He is casually referencing a decapitation.
He is explicitly acknowledging the exact horrific murder that these constables are currently accused of committing.
Right in front of the arresting officers.
The audacity.
And then he continues, he says, if you pluck the gourd, don't try to flow and tear away. Flow and tear away means to flee, to run away from the scene of the crime.
Right, so don't run away.
Because if you do, the parrot claws of the wing kiln, now wing kiln, refers to the yamen, the government office, because it's a structure with sweeping eaves that traps people.
Ah, I love that imagery.
And the parrot claws are the constables themselves, the talons of the state. If you run, the claws will float you, meaning they will catch you and lock you up.
So, if we strip away the poetic criminal cipher and translate it from mobster speak to plain English, Jigong is walking up to an armed police escort and saying, "Good morning. I see you guys cut off a head last night. But you didn't run away fast enough, and now the cops have caught you and chained you up. Looks like I'm going to have to go to court with you."
It is wildly, unspeakably inappropriate. Chai Yuan-Lu, who is already covered in chains, humiliated, and facing a death sentence, just snaps.
I mean, wouldn't
The
you?
text says his eyes go straight with sheer anger. He strains against his chains and screams at Jigong, "Good monk, who taught you these words?" He is essentially demanding, "Why are you talking like a triad boss right in front of the cops?"
We really have to unpack why the author uses this specific device. Jigong is a massive figure in Chinese folklore. He's an enlightened being, a living Buddha who performs miracles.
But he's talking like a thug.
But the author is heavily emphasizing his profound duality. Jigong does not sit on a remote mountain peak chanting sutras in pristine isolation. He operates down in the mud. He exists in the taverns, the brothels, the alleys, and the grimy criminal underworld. He knows their codes, their behaviors, and their language intimately. He navigates the sacred realm and the profane gutter with equal, effortless ease.
Is he showing off?
The fact that he uses this specific criminal language in front of official guards is a deliberate, mocking flaunt of authority.
And his linguistic flex immediately backfires on him, or at least it appears to. Because the local guards hear this bizarre monk speaking fluent gang slang to their murder suspects, and they make the most obvious logical assumption a cop can make.
Liu Tu, the head guard, hears this exchange and his eyes just light up. He says, the master is a friend of theirs. He knows the details. He just confessed everything.
He connects the wrong dots.
Liu Tu assumes Jigong is the mastermind of the crew, stepping out of the shadows to claim his men. He points at Jigong and says, "You're coming to face the lawsuit too."
Now, a normal person here would panic. They would claim diplomatic immunity as a monk. They would deny knowing them. But what does Jigong do?
He doesn't deny it.
He cheerfully, enthusiastically agrees. He smiles and says, "I'll fight the lawsuit. A good friend takes responsibility for a good friend." He essentially volunteers to take the fall for a brutal, theatrical murder that he hasn't even been formally accused of yet.
It is an utterly absurd confession. He is pleading guilty to the vague, overarching concept of being a criminal accomplice, entirely bypassing the legal process.
So a junior guard in the convoy, one of the newer, younger, lower-ranking guys trying to prove himself, walks over. He shakes a heavy iron chain, loops it around Jigong, and locks him up right there in the street.
Now they've got all three.
Now the police have 3 prisoners chained together, and this junior guard thinks he is incredibly smart. He thinks he has this monk psychology totally figured out. He looks at Jigong, sneers, and says, "You really are a good friend, monk."
The junior guard is being deeply, aggressively sarcastic.
Right. And Jigong, playing right along with the sarcasm, says, "Of course I am. And just for this impressive display of loyalty, I should get plenty of your wine to drink while we wait, shouldn't I?"
He's literally asking for a bribe.
He is openly asking for a bribe or a reward in exchange for confessing so easily.
And this specific exchange is where the junior guard makes a massive, catastrophic, tactical error.
Yeah.
He insults the monk's core motives.
What does he say?
He looks at Jigong and says, "You can walk. You want to drink my wine. You're just greedy. You got a room and now you want the whole bed."
Oh, wow.
That's a traditional idiom describing someone who is insatiable and takes advantage of hospitality. The guard is openly implying that Jigong is a fraud who only confessed to a murder so that the police would be forced to feed him and give him free alcohol while he sits in a holding cell.
He calls his bluff. He says, "You aren't a tough guy, mastermind. You're just a moocher looking for a free lunch."
And Jigong acts incredibly offended by this accusation.
He glares at this junior guard and delivers a devastating line. He says, "You useless thing. I give you face and you don't want it. Fine. I, the monk, won't fight your lawsuit anymore."
Which leads directly into one of the greatest moments of physical comedy and subversion in the entire text.
It is visually spectacular. Jigong, who is currently wrapped in heavy iron chains locked by the police, suddenly shakes his shoulders. He utilizes that same Jigong lightness skill we discussed earlier, leaps straight up into the air, completely defying gravity and the weight of the iron, and lands squarely on the tile roof of a nearby building.
He scales a building while fully chained.
All chained. He just sits down on the roof tiles, looks down at the terrified guards, and essentially threatens to unconfess.
This is where we need to examine the power dynamic flip, because it is brilliant. We have completely inverted the traditional structure of justice.
Yes. Okay, imagine a high-stakes, bizarre hostage negotiation. But the roles are completely backward.
How so?
The suspect, a guy who has already surrendered, already confessed to being in a gang, and has already been securely handcuffed, suddenly breaks free, climbs up a flagpole, and yells down to the lead detective, "I am withdrawing my confession. I am unsurrendering, unless you meet my luxury demands." It isn't a negotiation. It is extortion.
It is the absolute definition of extortion. The prisoner is now holding the police bureaucracy hostage, and the head guard, Lu Tu, immediately recognizes the immense danger of this situation.
Because Lu Tu isn't a crusader for truth. He is a middle management bureaucrat.
Exactly. We have to look at the mechanics of Lu Tu's job. Lu Tu is not worried about abstract justice or forensic truth. He is terrified of his performance metrics and his quotas.
Right.
From Lu Tu's perspective, he just experienced a miracle. He had the prime suspect of a major, horrific, potentially career-ending murder voluntarily confess and surrender in the middle of the street. It was a closed case.
A gift from above.
A bureaucratic gift from the heavens that required zero investigative work. And his idiot junior guard just insulted the suspect and drove him onto a roof.
If Jigong runs away now, Lu Tu has to walk into the magistrate's hall and explain how he had a confessed killer securely in iron chains and somehow let him bounce away over the rooftops.
Lu Tu's career would be over. The magistrate would likely have him severely beaten for incompetence or fired entirely. The system is merciless to failure.
So Lu Tu panics. The text shows us his violent reaction. Lu Tu storms over to the junior guard, rears back, and violently slaps him across the face.
Smacks him.
He screams at him, "You just squeezed the assignment away. Can you bear the responsibility for this escape?" The junior guard is terrified, clutching his face, and goes completely silent.
Then, in a brilliant comedic pivot, Lu Tu shifts instantly from a violent authoritarian enforcer to a desperate, groveling sycophant. He looks up at the monk sitting on the roof and begins to beg.
What does he say?
"Master, please, please come down. I will invite you to drink. I will buy you whatever you want."
The police captain is literally begging the prime murder suspect to let him buy him a drink, just so the suspect will agree to be arrested again. It is peak absurdity.
And Jigong, sitting on the roof, holding all the structural leverage, looks down and says, "Only for you, Lu Tu, because you asked nicely, I will fight this lawsuit."
And he jumps back down to the street in his chains. But the excursion has only just begun. Jigong realizes the power he holds, and he demands a specific level of compensation. He asks Lu Tu, "Where exactly are you going to treat me?"
And Lu Tu, sweating bullets, desperate to get this guy into a room where he can write down a confession, promises him the world.
He points across the street, directly opposite the county magistrate's office, to a massive, multi-story, high-end restaurant called San Yi Ju.
The nicest place in town.
Lu Tu says, "They have everything. Whatever you want to eat, whatever you want to order, I will not be stingy. I have a tab there. I don't have the cash on me, but put it all into my tab."
He is leveraging his own personal financial credit to appease his prisoner. He is going into debt to buy a confession.
So the entire convoy, the guards, the chained constables, and the chained monk walks into San Yi Ju. They take the murder suspect into this luxury establishment, head past the regular diners into a private back room, and sit down.
And Lu Tu immediately tries to get down to business. He wants a return on his investment.
What does he say?
He leans in and says, "Monk, you are a good friend. Don't make this difficult for us. Later on, just confess to all the cases."
Notice the shift in language there. The plural. All the cases. Lu Tu's ambition has just expanded. He isn't just trying to pin the headless monk on Jigong anymore.
He looks at this willing confessor and sees an opportunity to clear his entire desk of unsolved mysteries in one afternoon.
It is the ultimate police clearance sale. Lu Tu is treating this interrogation like a checklist. He leans in and says, "The unsolved case outside the South Gate. That was you, right?" And Jigong, smiling cheerfully, says, "It was me."
Lu Tu is thrilled. His metrics are skyrocketing. He says, "Excellent. What about the case outside the North Gate at the Gao family money shop? That was you too, right?"
And Jigong nods and says, It was me. But whatever you have to ask, let's eat first and talk later. I'm hungry.
Jigong is stalling. He knows exactly how the game is played. He is making sure he consumes the bribe before he puts anything in writing. Lu Tu, blinded by the prospect of closing 3 cases, agrees. He says, fine, eat, drink, then we walk across the street to the station, write a statement, you hand it in, and we're done.
Lu Tu thinks he has this totally locked up. He thinks he just manipulated the local Zodiac killer into a blanket confession for the price of a meal.
Meanwhile, we cannot forget about Chai and Du. They're sitting right there at the table, still locked in chains, watching this entire negotiation with absolute dread.
Oh, those poor guys.
The text gives us their perspective. It notes that Chai and Du knew the monk harbored no good intentions. He just wanted to eat at others' expense.
They know it's a con.
They know Jigong is running a massive con on Lu Tu, but they are prisoners. They cannot speak up without risking further wrath. They just have to watch the train wreck happen.
So the waiter comes over to the private room, and Jigong begins to order. And we need to detail exactly what he extorts from the police budget here, because it is not a modest bowl of noodle.
No, not at all.
The waiter asks what he wants, offering some seasonal snacks or perhaps a top-tier seafood banquet.
And Jigong, a man who wears patched robes and ostensibly follows the ascetic vows of Buddhism, bypasses all humility and goes straight for the most expensive luxury option available.
He demands the upper-class sea flavors banquet.
Yeah.
He orders a full table. We are talking multiple plates of cold cuts, complex hot stir-fries, platters of fresh fruits, bowls of dried fruits.
And the kicker, the absolute climax of his order, he demands 5 caddies of Chen Shao.
We have to contextualize that order. What is Chen Shao?
Chen Shao is aged Shaxing wine. It is a premium, high-quality, fermented rice wine, often served warm. It is not cheap tavern swill. It is a luxury import for this region.
And 5 caddies.
A caddy is a traditional measurement of weight. 5 caddies is roughly equivalent to 3 liters of liquor. He is ordering a massive, physically staggering amount of top-shelf alcohol solely for himself.
It is a banquet fit for a wealthy merchant or an imperial bureaucrat, and Jigong is sitting there wrapped in iron chains, eating and drinking every single bite and drop himself.
Chai and Du refuse to eat out of sheer anxiety, their stomachs in knots, so Jigong just joyfully gorges himself while they watch.
Now, look at Lu Tu's internal monologue while he watches his prisoner rack up this astronomically expensive bill.
Right, why would a corrupt cop tolerate this?
The author gives us his exact thoughts to explain it. Lu Tu thinks to himself, the monk has thought it through. With these several lives on his hands, once the case is settled and the confession is signed, it will definitely be an immediate execution.
Immediate decapitation, that is the specific legal punishment he anticipates.
Yes. Lu Tu is justifying the incredible expense because he views this meal through a very macabre lens. He views it as a dead man's last meal.
That is so dark.
In his mind, he is buying a flawless administrative record. He is trading a temporary restaurant tab for a permanent promotion and the gratitude of the magistrate.
The bill arrives, and it comes to 10 taels and 4 mace of silver.
We have to explain the economics of that, because 10 taels of silver isn't just a pricey dinner.
It is an exorbitant amount of money. In the economy of this era, a single tael of silver could often buy enough rice to feed a family for a month.
Wow.
10 taels represents months, perhaps a year's worth of wages for a common laborer. It is a devastating financial hit.
And Lu Tu is putting it on his personal tab. He signs the ledger, probably wincing at the number, but comforting himself with the thought of the glory he's going to receive for solving a multi-jurisdictional crime spree in one afternoon.
He is buying his own myth.
With a thoroughly full belly and undoubtedly a significant buzz from 3 liters of premium wine, Jigong wipes his mouth and announces he is ready.
So they head out.
The convoy leads him out of the restaurant, directly across the street to the yamen, into the magistrate's guard room for the official interrogation. This is the moment Lu Tu has paid for.
And this is where Jigong springs the trap in a masterclass of linguistic evasion.
The setup is perfect. They sit down in the interrogation room. Lu Tu gets his brush and ink ready. He is ready to transcribe the official, legally binding confession.
He starts with the first case he brought up at the restaurant.
He looks at Jigong and says, "Okay, monk, let's get this on paper. Tell me about the South Gate." Inside the garden of the scholar Gao Zigi, they hired a Taoist priest named Ye Qishuang to catch a demon. And during the ritual, on the altar, the priest's head disappeared. What is the story there?
It is a wild, highly publicized, unsolved case. a supernatural demon-catching ritual that ended in a gruesome, inexplicable beheading.
It's the kind of case that terrifies a community. And Lu Tu expects a detailed, signed confession of murder and dark magic. He dips his brush. But Jigong just looks at him blankly and says, I don't know.
Lutu's brush stops in midair. He is stunned. He says, wait, that's not right. Hold on. Just a minute ago, across the street at the restaurant, you explicitly said the case at the South Gate was yours. Why aren't you admitting it now?
This is the comedic climax of the entire administrative sequence. Jigong leans forward and delivers the punchline with absolute deadpan sincerity.
What does he say?
He says, what I meant was, outside the South Gate, I once stole a little chicken. I've never committed a murder. I don't have that kind of courage.
It is brilliantly, infuriatingly literal. He utilized a perfectly constructed evasion. He admitted to committing a crime at the South Gate, which allowed Lu Tu to assume he meant the crime.
He admits to petty poultry theft. Lu Tu is furious. He realizes he has been played and he is losing control of the narrative. But he can't give up. He just spent 10 taels of silver.
He's financially committed.
So he quickly pivots to the second case, desperately hoping to salvage a major conviction. He says, fine. What about outside the North Gate? At the Gao family money shop, someone was slashed across the neck for no reason. The tendons were severed in a brutal attack. That was you, right? You said it was you.
A violent, near-fatal slashing at a financial institution. A major felony.
And Jigong shakes his head sadly. No. The other day, outside the North Gate, near the money shop, I found a big tabby cat, and I stole it. I don't know anything else about any slashings.
Feline theft. He has methodically downgraded his grand confession from a brutal slitting of a human throat to casually walking away with someone's stray pet.
Lu Tu is absolutely losing his mind at this point. The reality of his situation is crashing down on him. He just bankrupted himself on a massive seafood and wine banquet for a man who is officially, legally confessing to stealing a chicken and a cat.
It's just spectacular.
He tries one last, desperate, aggressive attempt to pin the original crime on him, the only crime he actually needs him for. He slams his hand on the table and yells, "You are wrong! I am not asking about stealing chickens and cats. I am talking about outside the East Gate at Yang's Inn, the murdered headless bald monk. That at least was you, right?"
And Jigong, having completely exhausted his game and thoroughly humiliated his captor, simply looks at him and says, "That. I know even less about that."
Complete, absolute denial. Lu Tu tries to fall back on the ultimate tool of the state. Violence. He threatens him. He leans in and snarls, "If you don't talk now to me, when the magistrate officially holds court, they will use torture. They will clamp your fingers and beat your legs until you confess, and then it will be too late for you."
But Jigong is entirely unmoved by the threat of state violence. He just shrugs his shoulders, his chains rattling, and says, "I truly don't know. There is nothing to be done."
The breakdown of the bureaucratic process is total and catastrophic. Let's look at the arc of Lu Tu's day.
Oh, it's been a bad day for Lu Tu.
He thought he had a mastermind serial killer ready to sign a blanket confession, wrapping up every open, highly political case in his entire file.
Instead, he got extorted, publicly humiliated, financially drained, and left with an interrogation transcript that yielded absolutely nothing of legal value.
The machine of justice has ground to a complete halt because a single cog refused to turn in the expected direction.
The guards simply give up in sheer, exhausted frustration. They literally stop questioning him out of pure anger.
They don't write down a statement.
They don't write down a statement. They just send a runner into the inner hall to report to the magistrate that the prisoners have arrived, and they forward the entire chaotic mess straight up to the higher court.
And that is exactly where our excerpt leaves us, with the magistrate calling for the court to assemble, and the monk preparing to face the official, formal trial.